Okay. I think it says that I'm going live here now. This meeting is being live streamed. So what I'm going to do is just get my other screen set up here so that way I can watch and make sure that everything is going smoothly. And keep that on my side profile here. So good day, everybody. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share this to also, I believe, I don't know if I can actually. This is my first time going live on YouTube, so I'm trying to figure this out. So just bear with me here for a moment as I take a look at the ways that I can potentially share this or not share this. Might have to be something I do off my phone. Anywho, so this was a video that was inspired today from my higher self, my spiritual guides, and it's something that I've been wanting to do for a while. But to be honest, I wasn't ready, and it's one of those topics that I've actually been in like a really big amount of denial about. Mostly because I didn't want to believe that I was on this journey myself, and I was also just unsure about some of the information that's out there about twin flames and what comes with that. And because of a lot of the, I would say, different information, I really wasn't sure if what I was experiencing was actually a twin flame journey or if it was something else and it was karmic in nature. And through this journey, I've really kind of gotten more able to identify what the difference is between twin flame connections, soulmate connections, and karmic connections. And that's something I really wanted to talk about here today. And I also wanted to talk about the time travelers and which, you know, this ability that we have and most of us have, right, to decide what timeline we want to experience. Or if we want to experience them all, and why that can sometimes feel a little bit complicated and confusing when you don't feel like you can stick to one thing or one person or commit to anything. It's not because there's something wrong with you. It's because what my soul explains to me is because, you know, not all of us, some of us came here to really get the fullness of the human experience, which means experiencing so many different variations of relationships. And we learn the most in life through our relationships because we learn the most about ourselves through those relationships. And at the end of the day, that's really what we came here to do, is to master ourselves. And we can do that through these relationships. So if you're somebody like myself who hasn't had a whole lot of success with love and that working out, you know, of love and staying in long committed relationships, then you might be able to relate with this. And also just really touching base on this energy that a lot of people are in right now. I'm hearing from a lot of people, including myself, which is almost like this void space and feeling as if you are kind of unsure what your purpose is. You're not really sure where you're going. Maybe a lot of things aren't super happening right now. You're kind of like resting, feeling super tired. I've received some information in regards to why that's happening and why that your ego might be overthinking it and thinking something is wrong when something is not wrong. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share this quickly to Facebook as I see that I have the option now. And before I do that and we dive into this, I'm just going to quickly copy and share for those that can join in. And share. Okay, so let's dive into this. So the reason why it's taken me so long to speak about my personal journey with love is because, well, number one, although I do share a lot of my spiritual journey online, just trying to make sure everything's plugged in here. Although I do share a lot of my spiritual journey online, I am still quite a private person and I don't like to share a lot of my, say, said and said dirty laundry, right? But I felt really pulled by my spirit guides to start talking about my journey of love, and seeing if the information that I share here can help other individuals that have gone through a similar journey or experiencing similar aspects. In regards to this information that I'm going to bring through today, there will be a lot of aspects that I'll leave out just in respect to the other individuals that have been a part of my journey in my life. But I will give just some insights on how that's looked for me and why it's been a complicated journey. So, for those of us on this path of this journey of this ascension that came here to experience like the fullness of what that is, it can sometimes be very hard for us to be locked into one timeline. And what that means, what do I mean by timeline? Timeline means an experience, a direction in life that you're going, a trajectory. So, for example, some people, find their person that they marry by the time they're 25. They get married, they have kids, and they literally stay in that same relationship for their entire life, no matter whether or not they are happy or not. Some people stay in those relationships to the demise where they literally were completely unhappy the whole marriage and they wish that they didn't marry that person. And, now they're in their 60s, 70s, and it's too late, right? Other people get into, marriages and relationships and they stay with them to, the beginning to the end. And yeah, they go through their bumps because they're supposed to, but that was part of their soul's journey to experience life through a long-term relationship. Now, if you're somebody like me that has not had that kind of experience, and I mean, myself, I'm only 32, so of course, I haven't had like the fullness of like a very super long-term marriage or anything like that. But I knew from a very young age that I didn't even want to get married. And I think part of that was also due to just the way that I grew up. I mean, I didn't really grow up around that kind of dynamic. Nobody in my life was married in my family, like nobody. So other than like one family member, but even they're not together now. So this dynamic of like getting married to the first person you fall in love with and just you have to stay with that person, it never sat well with me. Something about that felt like incorrect, and I didn't like it. And there's something that I know my soul here values the most, which is freedom. And I've never been able to find a relationship where I feel free to fully be myself and to fully experience life that I want to through that relationship. And so for myself, it's been one of those experiences where I get into these relationships, I see the potential, right? Because of my abilities to see into the future and to read timelines, I can see the possible positive trajectory with this person that I get into a relationship with. And so I go for it, right? Even sometimes against my better judgment. My intuition usually tells me, no, don't go for it. But then there's this other part of me that's like, no, you have to go for this because you're going to learn so much through this. And so, like I was saying in the beginning of the video, there's this dynamic within relationships. Like the more that you experience different relationships, the more you learn about yourself. As long as you are learning the lessons, right? You are learning all of that. Then you're growing all the time. And that's not to say that you can't do that in a long-term relationship either, because people go through changes all the time. And you see that in marriages as well, right? Where throughout the marriage, that one partner changes and the other partner has to like catch up with that and change, and they do that together, right? Sometimes they don't do that together. One partner keeps changing and then they grow apart and then they end up just living like roommates for the rest of their lives and never being fully happy. So there's that dynamic too. But today we're not talking about that. We're talking about those who haven't been able to find a committed, stable relationship and why that might be for you. So for some of us on this journey, like I was saying, we've come here to experience ourselves through others. And so this could be expressed or described as a twin flame or twin soul experience. And again, this was something that I didn't believe in. I thought it was just a bunch of like new age BS. And I just wanted nothing to do with it. I was in complete denial. Although early on in my spiritual journey, I was getting confirmations that my last partner was my twin flame. But I was like, no, there's no way. This relationship's been so toxic. This can't be. But it was because I didn't understand what a twinned journey was about. So now I have this more deeper understanding. And so what I've come to understand is that a soul, okay, and that could be you, and I know this to be true for me, so that's why I'm speaking on it, has decided to break off and fractal into multiple different bodies. Sorry, my eyeball. And by doing this, it means that I have the opportunity to learn myself through the lens, the perception of other people, of other bodies, of other lifetimes, of other ways that they're expressing their journey. Apparently my eye all of a sudden wanted to catch something in the air. Um, and so because of this, there's that dynamic as well. And then there's also the dynamic of soul contracts where you're contracted in with this soul to have an experience together, to activate one another, to grow, to heal, to go through hardships, so that way you can become more adept in your journey of being a human and learn through that harshness. So, as we go through harshness in life, this is where we learn our strengths, right? This is where we learn what we're capable of. This is where we learn who we are and who we aren't, because we understand what we don't like or what we don't need, right, within that relationship and how it affected us. And then we learn how to overcome that, right? Now, if you're an individual who's been in a lot of failed relationships and you're not learning the reason for it, right, the lessons, then you're just inevitably going to keep repeating that because your soul wants you to grow from that. And so with these twin souls that can be in other bodies, it's not meant to be this beautiful, easy connection where it's just all love and light and oh my gosh, like I found my other half of me. It's not like that at all. It's actually quite the opposite, because this person that you find begins to mirror to you all of the ways in which you are still needing to work on yourself. And a lot of that's very hard to look at because it's what we would consider about ourselves to be our negative or not so positive traits or habits or behavior or actions that we have created upon ourselves through ego identity, through our life of just trying to figure out how to be a human, right? Like we create these identities about ourselves based on other people's judgments and projections, the traumas we go through, all those sort of scenarios. It helps to form the lower ego body mind. And we kind of get lost in that, right? And that's why through this journey of finding these twin souls, it literally deconstructs like a freaking bomb all the false ego identities you have created, and it starts to just pull it apart like a crumbling. And it's the most uncomfortable and the hardest experience because there's just no stopping it. And even if you try to escape it, it will still find you because you're so connected to this other person, because again, it's just you. So you feel everything. And as you're elevating, they're elevating. As they feel sad, you're feeling sad. And so it's like you're having to do the work together, but it doesn't always end up like that in the beginning. So that it seems to be like, from my experience, there's one person who begins that journey and gets to a certain degree. And then afterwards, that other person sees that growth and will follow, right, that other person due to that connection. It's almost like impossible for them not to. So that's been part of that experience for me. And it's been frustrating at times because you kind of get in your head at times and you kind of think like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I just be like everybody else and just put up with my partner and, settle? Basically, the way that I see it is just like this level of settling. And my soul just simply was just not okay with that. There's this like energy of just needing to constantly grow and change. And I need that from the person that I'm with. And if they weren't able to do that with me, then my soul was just like, I got to keep going. Like I'm out of here. Right. And then you end up inevitably, it looks like leaving people behind, losing friends, losing family, losing lovers. And the ego within these people, right, will take it very harshly. And most people will judge your journey very much because unless you're on a twin flame journey, you simply just can't understand it. You have no idea what it's like. And people will judge it so harshly. I've had so much judgments on this journey, and I've tried to do everything I can to make it, because of my higher level awareness of being able to like understand what's happening on like a spiritual soul level. I try to like, articulate that information to friends and family around me, but they still just can't understand, right? Like, why can't you just move on? Why can't you just da 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 da, right? But it's because you simply just cannot. You're connected on a soul level. So there's always going to be a connection between you and this person that is your twin soul. And again, you might have multiple. And this is something that I'm coming to understand too. So I activated, as of when I went to Spain, my divine union timeline, meaning that anybody who's in union with me divinely, whether it's a soulmate, a twin flame, twin soul, I'm coming into union with those aspects of myself. And the reason for that is so that way I can continue to elevate and ascend. It doesn't mean that I necessarily have to pick one. I have to tie into a relationship. In fact, my soul doesn't want to do that at all. It's never wanted to do that. I have this innate knowingness of that in this lifetime. I did not come here to be tied down to one person, place, or thing. It's like this constant traveling gypsy. And so this brings me into like that information of like the time travelers. And so whenever you make a decision to go towards one experience with one person, one job, one direction, whatever that may be, that's a timeline, right? But during that, when you're experiencing certain aspects, say you meet somebody and you're healing so much, and this has been my experience of meeting another twin soul. There was so much past life stuff that was coming up. There was so much that we were mirroring to one another that I still needed to heal within myself and look at within myself that I didn't want to look at, and vice versa for him. And it was messy, it was hard. But once we got through it, it was like that timeline felt like it was completed. Whatever needed to be completed was completed, the contracts. And all of a sudden my soul was like, jump on out, let's go over here now. And it doesn't mean that I'm not still on that timeline experiencing things with that person or this other person, but I'm jumping in and out when it's time, because my soul knows when it's time to jump in and out, to experience more, to connect with this person for a certain reason, to have that conversation. Okay, you've gone over here and had this experience, now with this direction, you need to jump back out and go back into there, because now there's something more to learn with that, and vice versa. And it'll just keep do like a pinball machine. And it's a lot. I was kind of losing my mind here a little bit over the last 3 months, because I was just like, what is going on? Like, I don't even know what to do with this. This is just chaos. It feels like pure chaos. It feels so stressful because you're trying not to hurt anybody. You're trying not to disappoint anybody, but inevitably you end up doing that because you're not meant to stick with anybody. You're meant to just keep bouncing around. And unless people understand that information that are on the path with you, it just starts to get really chaotic. And so that's been my experience. And I finally just had to go to a point where I just had to completely surrender and just like, it's like if you're in the middle of a hurricane, right? And everywhere around is just chaos and chaos and just chaos and chaos. And then all of a sudden you just sit right in the middle of the storm. And then you just, instead of being a part of the storm, you're just observing it. And you're in the quiet part of it. And you're just sitting there. And there's just like, there's nothing that you can really do to stop it. You just have to observe it. And you have to just come back to your center and your heart space. And that's literally what it's been like for me jumping into the divine union timelines. It has not been all love and light. It has not been like, oh my gosh, here's my soulmate now. Okay, time to get married and like move on with life and finally settle. No. And I'm not saying that's the experience for everybody, but I am noticing it with other friends of mine who are on the same timeline. They're going through similar situations. And this is something I didn't understand until I got into this, until I activated this part of myself into this timeline. So this is where that timeline hopping comes in. And then the other aspect is the timeline split that happened during the eclipse. So the way that I see it visually, like the visions that I get, is that during the timeline split, right, souls had an opportunity to make the leap, right, into the new timelines of Earth, heading towards the new Earth, right? And for those of us that did make the leap, it's like, we didn't notice it at first. It's like on the day of the eclipse, ellipse, whatever people are calling it, I don't care. Something happened and something split. On that day, you didn't feel anything, right? But it's like anything, right? When something happens, you don't always feel the effects right away. And okay, I'm just trying to make sure that this thing is like working here. I don't know why it's making it look like it's not, but that's okay. for those of us that made that leap, okay, so there was this time period of just kind of like, okay, just going about life, da 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 da, everything's fine, and then all of a sudden it started to catch up. And I would say about a week ago, I was in this chaos energy, and I was just like, I was just sitting somewhere. I don't remember where I was sitting, but I just finally decided I needed to sit down. And as I was sitting, I was looking around, and I remember saying to myself, where am I? Like, where the fuck am I? Like, I don't recognize this. Everything feels different. Like, who am I? I don't even know myself anymore. Like, who is this person? Like, why do I look like this? Like, I feel like I look different. I feel different. Everything around me looks different. There's just something different. And I'm realizing now that we're playing catch up to that huge collective timeline split that happened. And as that's happening, it could feel like certain parts of your life are falling apart or crumbling apart because you're literally now in a new timeline. So that old reality needs to fade away, needs to fall away. So that new reality that you've jumped into can come into fruition. It can come to be. And that process isn't instantly, it's a slower process. So it takes a little bit of time. And as you're integrating into that new time, you might be in a void space where you're just sleeping all the time and you're not feeling super inspired. You're not feeling super clear about which direction you're supposed to go in. Things just feel off. And for me, that's been my experience. And that's been for some of the friends that I'm talking to too. A very similar experience with all of that. And so while this is playing catch up, there's nothing that we need to change. There's nothing that we need to control. We just need to surrender and let every day play out the way that it's supposed to. And it's all going to come together. All right. So in terms of the timeline split stuff, that's mostly everything I wanted to share. There was just a little bit of information on that. But the biggest thing that my soul's been asking me to share with has been about my love life. And that's something that I don't talk about very often. I'm very secretive about that stuff, but I feel that it's important for me to share this and to let anybody know that's been on this similar journey that you're not alone and you're not crazy. And people are going to judge you, but it is what it is. And you have to stay true to your knowingness and your heart and what your soul is guiding you and leading you to do. And as you're going through it, just trying to stay in your highest level of integrity as you can, being a good person, trying to do the best you can, but not beating yourself up if along the way you feel as if you have let people down or hurt people. And as long as you know you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart, then you can sit easy and feel easy about the changes and the decisions that you're having to make along this journey of being able to find love. Because at the end of the day, that's what we all want, right? And from my experience as well, it's like I've also had to really integrate and find that within myself. And for years I didn't love, well, I was very confident from the time I was young. I always loved myself. And then through, as I got older, through experiences, especially with a relationship I got into when I was a teenager, which lasted for about 6 years, and it was very hard on me. Through that experience, I lost myself and I stopped loving myself. And it had nothing to do with me, right? It had to do with the other person. But I was dyeing my hair for years. I didn't have my natural hair color. I was always trying to change something about myself. I was always trying to look a certain way to fit this certain mold. And it's taken me now, since having my daughter, she was my biggest teacher on a soul level of teaching me how to embrace all that I am. And I was able to, when I looked at my daughter when she was born, I had just seen perfection. I seen just pure beauty. And then I realized what I was looking at was myself. And by seeing my daughter in that way, I realized I needed to see myself in that way, and finding my way back to myself. And that's been the journey for me. And by focusing on self-love over the past 4 years, it has released a lot of friendships and relationships that simply were not serving me in that degree, that were not able to see me for the way that I knew myself to be. And so I had to release that. And through doing that, I have been able to bring about this incredible amount of self-love and self-confidence, and not in like a cocky or egotistical way. It's just like I see myself for the essence that I am. And I've always known that that was there. It just got lost in all of the projections and the judgments that partners, men, had placed upon me, women that had also projected onto me, and society, right? People who I thought were my friends and were actually just they weren't my friends, you know. They were pretending to be my friends, and so there was something that they could get from me by being my friend, and so I had to release a lot of that. And in doing so, that was like the highest form of self love. And that self love allows me now to embody this divine union timeline because I love myself so deeply. I'm finding others who also love me as deeply as I love myself, right? It's being reflected. But because it's because it's still another journey, it's not the final destination yet, meaning that the people that are coming in, I'm not necessarily meant to settle down with. I'm meant to learn even more about myself with and go through this next stage of the spiritual journey, which is like mind-blowing and crazy. So I hope that this information might help somebody out there today. And if it does, feel free to send me a message. Um, I'm always open to talking and helping individuals through this work and healing all of the karma and healing all of the ancestral wounds and all of the ego identity stuff, and really just like stripping it all down raw so you can rebuild back into your true raw authentic self and step into those divine union timelines for yourself and start experiencing love in many different forms, right? Because love is not just experienced through romantic love, it's experienced through soul love. I have so many souls in my life now where we just deeply love each other, and it's not about romantic love. It's deep soul love because we see that within each other. Like it's that depth of where we've met ourselves. And we also have a deep soul connection, right, from past lives and before we incarnated, right? My soul cluster, my soul tribe, my soul people, right? And because I have that in my life, I almost don't feel like I need a relationship because I'm just so complete within myself and I'm so whole with the beautiful souls that are around me that love me and truly love me. They don't use me, they don't judge me. They're not doing all the things that my karmic friendships and my karmic relationships were doing in the past because I've healed that. And those karmic relationships and friendships weren't a bad thing. They were there to teach me how to love myself. And I did. And so now I've unlocked this new timeline, and I hope that for everybody. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me at any time. You can find me on my website, which is the amraray.academy. That's the website. Or you can find me on Facebook at the Amra Ray Academy. If you're wondering what that means, Amra is just Irish Gaelic for Amber. So it's the Amber Ray Academy. It's my school. It's the way in which I'm wanting to give back and help this planet with my work. And if there's anything that you feel that I could help you with,